Okay, here we are. Tonight's focus is the film Sucka Punch, and I am here tonight with the producers, Rebecca and Sarah, and with the director, Iggy, and the writer, Ibrahim. We, every night, proceed as though everyone has seen the film because we don't want to have to tiptoe around spoilers. That is especially relevant for this film because obviously it has this twist. So sorry if you haven't seen it, tough luck. We're gonna assume that you have, and hopefully you can figure it out afterwards if not. And for everyone's benefit who has seen it, because obviously there's a lot of Uncertain Kingdom films, I'll just recap it. Sucker Punch is essentially a pretend advert for a drinks brand called Sucker Punch, which takes the form of a young woman making a very stirring speech for everybody to get on board and sort of be alert to what brands are doing to try and pretend that they're on message or that they're activist in some way, but actually all they're doing is adopting things we care about to disguise the things that they care about. And it twists at the end, revealing that all the way she's been speaking and everything that she's been saying is stacking up to sell you this drink, Sucker Punch. And as one of the reviews says, the cleverness of the film is that not only does it manage to pull this off, but it's already told you in advance because the film is called Sucker Punch, but it still works. And there was a lot of debate around the title, so that review vindicated you guys because we weren't sure, but you guys were like, no.
This is it.
So there you go. Well done, you guys. So let's kick off in the obvious place. Iggy, the idea originated with you. How did it?
Yeah. So for me, Sucker Punch is basically that. It's about the insidious ways in which brands use certain groups, certain communities, certain individual cultures to their benefit in order to present themselves as people who are standing up for the movement, who are fighting the great fight, but in actual fact, they're only there to seek their own kind of reward, and that's to get people to buy their products and get to sell their products. And it actually came about by kind of looking around myself. I think that for me, as a filmmaker who wants to make really interesting stories, wants to tell them, like, make them really important, I found myself caught in the rapture of like wanting to stay relevant, but also like getting on these brand deals that get like influencers to jump on board projects and get them to talk about like really like in a lukewarm way, like this, like about what they believe and their kind of like their social political stance on like, I don't know, like LGBT issues or black issues or certain type of issues, but at the end of the day they're selling products. And I found myself caught up in that kind of like that world. So I thought that I might as well make a film out of it that discusses really the way in which we are living in a world where in the world of so much content, we actually don't know what true or false is, and we're more than happy to be fed lies. And I think that was just a real weird thing that I didn't want to let go without actually having a real discussion about. So I thought about this idea about this girl who basically tells you that she's at the forefront of a movement that tries to push the boundaries of the way in which we think about content, just like political issues, the things that are happening now, and like social media in general tries to get people just to like have this whole movement where they lock off social media. And in actual fact, she's just there to sell a drink. And it's really interesting. The reason why I wanted to discuss the two worlds, so like where the brands come in and how they commodify these kind of social movements, also us as people, and how we sometimes ignore those signs and we happily play along with that whole idea. So even as an audience, you kind of watch it and you happily play along because you believe it. You kind of, you want to root for her, but at the same time, is that the forum to discuss these issues? Are these kind of like content pieces? Are these adverts? Are these people or organizations or platforms the right people to be having these discussions? Anyway, I talk loads.
No, anyway, that's great. That's exactly what we needed.
Yeah.
And at what stage did Ibrahim get involved, and how did that work? Because we were saying just before we came on, it's not the most common dynamic for a director to come up with something and then say, okay, here, writer, I need you to write something that fits what I'm seeing in my mind. And that's a difficult task. How did that work between the two of you?
Yeah, I thought it was a great kind of like collaboration. I unfortunately just don't have the skill set to be able to figure out like lines and like narrative and story and beats. I think beats are really important for this film because at every single stage that something happens, there's always a movement from one place to the other. Or, you know, we start with the bedroom and then we move into the streets, then we'll go to the rooftop. So we needed like just someone who understood the kind of like the actual creative, but also understood what it meant to see brands and things like that be co-opted. And I feel like Ibrahim just did the absolute thing. Like he was able to really understand the vision, but understanding it was supposed to be gimmicky and it's supposed to play on the idea of a social justice warrior, but then had this twist at the end, which you did perfectly. So Ibrahim, do you wanna chat about it?
So at the beginning, I remember when Iggy and I we met and he showed me the pitch. At that point, we were still kind of trying to figure out the specificity of the story and the way that we wanted to kind of explore this kind of insidious relationship between brands and social justice. And I really, the message that Iggy was Iggy's vision really resonated with me. Being a person who will get on a train and then see an advert that's like using the word revolution or something, and I'm like, it just it kind of unsettles you. And so what I really tried to do was to think about how ads play on our emotions, and to kind of give you characters. This isn't necessarily a conventional narrative piece, but still there are characters that you immediately root for as soon as you sort of see them on screen, looking at the mirror, judging themselves. And it was important to me to kind of weave that emotional aspect into the story, because the ads that we're criticizing, they do exactly that. So yeah, it was about thinking about how to tell an emotional story, how to not make the narrative feel like what's the word, didactic. Like it had to feel organic. It had to feel like something that you could just actually just see as you're scrolling through your dash. And so Iggy and I, and the rest of the team, we spent some time like just working on different iterations of that until we came up with Sucka Punch. And the name Sucka Punch came right towards the end. I can't remember who came up with that, by the way, because Salute.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I completely forget.
It was you, Iggy.
Yeah, it was you, Iggy.
I remember because we were in Barbican.
Yeah.
Back when we could all be in the same place. We were Barbican, and you were like Sucka Punch, and I was like, nah.
Nah. Yeah, there was something similar, something like that. Or the title sounded, or the set was. But I quite like the idea of it being completely different, or like writing it in a different way. It was kind of a luck, I guess.
No, it totally works. I was completely wrong. On the production side of things, bringing you both in, there is a central problem with this production in that you've got a short film budget and you are trying to produce an advert look, and adverts have near enough unlimited budgets in comparison to the way that we make shorts. How did you face that down? What was that like? Because I know it wasn't easy.
Yeah, so it's like making a commercial on a short film budget is already a challenge, but I think it was a team that were involved, you know, Iggy's experience, Olan, the cinematographer's experience in commercials. I think my experience is more making a shoestring budget look like more. So I think that kind of helped, so that it kind of combines, but it was definitely, I think we were so lucky with a team who were all just so passionate about the idea, because it was obviously so unique and so smartly told, I think, through the script and the directing. But so I think everyone just naturally got really passionate about it. It's really hard. I think when I met Iggy, it was like impossible not to be passionate about the story. He spoke for like 5 minutes on it. I was like, I'm in. So I think it was kind of everyone going above Call of Duty knowing that we were quite clear about the situation. I think everyone knew the score really.
And Sarah, for you, I know you were on the ground for a lot of it. How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. It was tough, but I mean, I think it was just amazing to have such an incredible team working on this together, and we were so passionate, all of us, just so passionate about the story, and we had probably the most phenomenal crew working from like start to finish, from the branding side, and then on set, and like you said, working with Signature Pictures was a big help too. That was a really incredible experience.
Tell us a bit about that, because that is such a specific way of working with Signature.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know Signature Pictures, and you were the one that told us about it, which was fantastic, and they've got this amazing training program for people that would not normally get the opportunity to work like in the industry, or like to be able to come on sets and work on these productions. And so we met with them right at the start, and they were like really interested in the idea, and they gave us some funding in like return for us having some of their trainee students on set with us. And we were a little bit hesitant at the start because we weren't sure, you know, you don't know these kids, you don't know where they come from, you don't know what experience they have or how they're going to be, but they were incredible. I think we were all blown away by how passionate they were and how like into it. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was really, really good.
They were the last ones to leave each day. They wouldn't leave until, you know, they knew no one else needed help. It was just amazing.
Yeah. I remember hearing your second ask for something on the radio that I didn't hear, and then this person appeared with it, and the next call that went out on the radio was Adam for president, and I loved it so much. Like, they're obviously so embraced by the crew.
And also, like, what was really interesting was I remember like the whole kind of there was like, we did a Q&A, or like we came to their kind of like the offices and spoke to them about the whole film, the whole idea. And it was really strange because I thought they were just like tapping out. I just thought they were just super tired, like whatever. But it was so interesting because at the end, you had these, they had this one guy who came and he just asked loads of questions. And then he was just making references to stuff that was beyond my experience. Like, he was just talking about films and references and all these other things. And I was just like, I had to like make some notes. And go back home and be like, so what is that? He says Sucka Punch is very close to this film. I'm like, okay, Googling that film. Like, okay, what is, I need to see it. So there was just so many smart people that were so super interested in the film and also could relate to the story. As young people who absorb content in that way. So yeah, it was just great to get them on board because it was the prime people that we wanted to actually get to see the film.
We've had a question come in from someone who has called themselves I Love Chicken. And they have asked, who did the artwork for the branding and how many iterations did it go through?
Yeah, so I mean, we, in our office, we've got Electric Shadow Company, and then we've got a branding studio called A Studio of Our Own. And it's amazing because we've got this very like collaborative sharing space. We're all in each other's, well, when we were allowed to be in close proximity with each other all the time. And Tom is one of the designers at ASU, and he, you know, we went to him like in early days and we're just like, listen, we've got this short film that we're doing, and like, it would be amazing if you could get involved, but you know, always there's these restrictions with short films budgets, and we understand that design is like it can be quite an expensive feat, and we just don't really have the capacity to be able to go and do that, but would you be interested? And he was on board right from the start, and he pretty much came up with the design by himself, I think, and he got it pretty spot on. I don't think we had to go through too many iterations. It was maybe like 2 or 3, but the colors, like, we told him obviously the look that we were going for, and like, you know, very like young and vibrant and punchy. And I think Iggy came up with the colors of like green and purples, and he just incorporated that into this beautiful design. That the film wouldn't really be what it is without it. So
a huge amount rests on it, because that, I mean, it is the punchline, and there's so many puns here around punch, but it is, it is the punchline of the movie, and if it doesn't work, it just would have tanked.
But also it was super important because he not only did the actual the design of the can, the drink, but also he did like posters that was included in the main protagonist's room. He included like so many different things that we embedded through the actual film alongside production design and styling to make it be believable that this was a whole commercial. So I think it was super important that we had that design, and he smashed it. Absolutely smashed it.
Yeah. We've got another question. What has been the most interesting review you've seen of the film?
I saw a vlog from a teenage girl. I can't tell. I think it was part of a publication, and
was it Into Film?
Yes, yeah. That just that made me like feel really good. I don't know, just seeing someone show that much enthusiasm about something that I'd worked on and something whose message I really like resonates with me. It was really nice to see her enthusiasm about the film, and check it out if you guys haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it. I'm gonna check it out. Was it so? It was positive then.
Yeah,
it was positive, and it's like it just really like struck a chord with her. And it's the it's the group of people that Iggy that you were trying to speak to. So I don't know why I haven't sent you a link to it, but I'll find one and I'll send it to you.
It's an organisation called Into Film, and they have Into Film. I don't know where you put the emphasis, but they have a lot of young journalists. I mean, really young, like teen journalists, and reporting on camera with the most unbelievable. I mean, it stunned me. I don't know about you, Ibrahim, but I was just like, bloody hell, like this girl is serious.
She was serious. She was
giving really thoughtful, and they've done them for a few of the films, like giving really thoughtful reviews of each of the films, and it's been really striking, and like you say, like gratifying, because that is the audience that we wanted to reach. And when we did the test screenings, we had one with a younger audience, and they really responded to Sucka Punch as well, so it definitely delivered on that. We don't have heaps of time, so I want to get into the thing that I think we're going to have a lot to say on, which is how the meaning of the film has changed, or if not the meaning, what the impact of the film is in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement of the last, I guess we're into a month now, and how you guys feel about that.
Ibrahim, do you want to go first? What do you want me to say?
I mean, just to say first and foremost, like the Black Lives Matter movement has been very galvanizing to me. It's been really encouraging to see the amount of work that's been done, like in America and across the world, and seeing that solidarity has been one of the most heartening things about this horrible time in which we're living. And then like 5 minutes after the protests were happening, brands obviously seized on the rhetoric and the iconography and started incorporating it into their tweets and stuff. And it just gave me the same feeling I felt when I first saw like a woke ad. And I feel like, it's just kind of helping the kind of further the point that we're making in this film
I agree. I completely agree. I think Ibrahim, spot on. It really captures the whole idea of like brands kind of leeching onto what's kind of considered that hot at the moment, and not understanding the amount of work that needs to be told, and the amount of work. And it really does go back to the intrinsic nature of what the insidious ways brands do try to market themselves to other audiences. Because in actual fact, moments like these, social movements which are political as this one, it requires a lot of deep research, and it requires a lot of actual impact and movement by these brands to actually consider their processes and how they actually are complicit. But in actual fact, the fact that they have these like people post these black squares without understanding the actual meaning behind it, further goes on to exemplify the fact that there's a co-opting of social movements, and there's a co-opting of these ideas which are actually quite really dangerous. The idea that you are on the good side or you're on the most positive side, trying to make it seem that this is kind of what you do, but in actual fact it isn't, is a real big problem in our kind of society. And especially when you look at like from a global level, creative industries and creative platforms and what they do and how they do it, like production companies, film, like it goes beyond just like like Square. It's like how we actually deal with kind of like anti-blackness, racism within our, and seeing so many different brands kind of jump on board made me think that there's still a big problem in terms of how we actually address these issues. So yeah, it's really strange the fact that it came about, like this whole film came about at this time. But I feel as though it was necessary because it kind of gave rise to the whole idea of it's not just because you post a black square doesn't mean you're in solidarity, and just because you make a statement doesn't mean you're actually kind of like on the side of people who are actually dealing with these issues. It's a constant struggle to it's a constant kind of like fight to make sure you're on the right side of history. And I feel like that's just, this film kind of addresses that. It teaches people not just to look at kind of like activism from like face value, and also they may not necessarily be the right people to be kind of like amongst the movement. So yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts.
I don't want to put you on the spot, so don't worry if nothing comes to mind, but I wondered if there are any brands that you have seen now or previously that you thought are doing it well.
Oh, well, okay, cool. I was going to say not well. There's a lot
or
of
if not well, okay.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to say this, and I think this is, I don't necessarily believe it's not necessarily kind of like content that they're creating, but I think I saw there's this brand or this platform called Everpress, and they make kind of like t-shirts. And recently, like, it's not necessarily content that they've made, but there was an email that went around by like the founder himself that basically spoke about his own kind of practices and his own employees that were black and brown and how they faced different challenges in the workplace, and he apologized for it. And he kind of like he looked at kind of like the things in which he's going to do next. And I think that was really important. It may not necessarily be like an ad or a brand, like a piece of content, but I feel like that type of communication to the younger audience or to black, brown creatives in the industry was super important, because it felt that wasn't just going, I'm going to put a black square on my social media. That was actually looking and understanding, okay, what are the next steps to make sure that there's longevity to this movement.
Do you think it's possible for a brand, even when successful, like was it Everpress you said, yeah, to do it in a way that isn't cynical?
It's difficult. I think it's possible, but I just feel like it's so difficult with these brands because it's so intrinsic to their business model. They need to make money off of these kind of like, yeah, and they use culture and they use sort of these political social movements as a means to do it. And so it's always kind of seen as a double-edged sword. You kind of look at them, you think, I respect you for being able to pave the way and do something different, but at the same time, it always will have that touch of criticism because you don't necessarily know where their intentions lie. But I think it's difficult. It's difficult to really understand exactly who's part of the movement, who isn't. But I think it's important to address the fact that you can only learn from your mistakes and try to make it better. And I think that there just needs to be a conversation about the way in which we use these platforms and how we use these brands, and why, in actual fact, we need to talk about, if a brand like Foot Locker, why they need to talk about LGBTQ lives, if they're not necessarily about that, if they're not necessarily considering, if they're not really, their main intention is just to sell trainers. I think it may not be the best forum to discuss it. I think that's what we need to start having a real discussion about.
It's that shift between, and it's happened a long time ago now, really, but the shift between originally you sold a product, and then you sold a brand, and now you sell the values of the brand, and the abstraction from the product has gotten into the second stage to the point where you can't even tell sometimes what you're being sold.
Yeah,
and every company has to have a like, I believe. Yeah, and it's actually freaky. It's like, I don't need you to believe anything. I just need you to make a decent bar of soap.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't need people who are part of a community to say, as a Black person, as a person of color, and then had this, you know, this like content thing that's super like fleeting and like not really about the culture, to just make it seem as though if they are, like, I'd rather go back to the days where you saw things, advertisements on like shop windows, and it said brand new toothbrush, you know, go inside for more, and then you test it out. I'd rather go back to those type of days rather than using people as commodities.
I feel like they're filling the space, that brands are filling the space that has been left by any kind of public moral leadership. We've wandered so far away from the film, I'm enjoying this, where it's like they can do that because there's nobody else taking up that space.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether out of this mess that we're living through now, both COVID and the Black Lives Matter in response, like whether that's who could grow out of it and actually start to take that space, that territory back from brands. John, who you guys know, obviously our colleague on this, has said, have any of the panelists seen this? And he sent a link. I don't know how we're going to share this with our participants, but we'll figure it out. Which is this, he says it's a brewdog.com UK eye test appointment, which is a similar process as what's going on in Sucka Punch, but with a different agenda. It's for a beer called Bernard Castle Eye Test, and they're giving all the proceeds to fund the making of they're making hand sanitizer for the NHS. I'm intrigued. Has this gone to all panelists? It's gone to all panelists. I'm gonna post it now to all of the attendees, so they can see it too.
Yeah.
I think that's something I can do. Stand by, please. Success. So we can all check that out in our own time.
Definitely.
We've got only a couple of minutes left, so just bringing it back to the film, as much as I was enjoying that and wanted to stay on talking about it, I'd like to ask each of you what your hopes are for the legacy of the film, both whether, you know, who you'd hope to see it or how you'd hope they would feel about it, but also if the film has had a legacy for you, something that you've taken from it. Sarah, let's start with you. I pick on you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a film that's going to just carry on being more and more relevant the further that time goes on. Like, social media is just something that's become so encapsulating in every aspect of our lives. And I think that there's lots of people that can get a lot from it, and then brands and stuff jump onto this bandwagon to be able to do what they do to push their products and whatever else through all this. But then there's another side of people who just don't really connect with it on that level. And if you don't connect with it on that level, then you get made to feel really guilty because you're like, you know, I'm not really on Facebook all the time, and I'm not on Instagram all the time, and I'm not, like, I don't follow, you know, there was the Black Lives Matter, the post on Instagram with the black square. And I missed that just because I wasn't on Instagram, because I just didn't see it. And then you go on it like the next day and I was like, oh shit, like, fuck, I didn't post anything. I was like, does that make me bad? Like, am I a bad person now? So it's just, I think there's so many different aspects of it that are going to just carry on being more and more pertinent. And I think this film is something that's going to address all issues now. In 10 years time, in 20 years time, it's going to probably be a whole different ball game of issues, but still as important. So yeah, I mean, I'm really, really proud to have been a part of this. I think that it's so important and amazing team. And I hope that people watch it if they haven't seen it, because it's really good and it's really short. So they have no excuse not to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even make a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
To watch this movie. Rebecca?
I think that I would, for me, it's how brands, you know, they kind of latch on to current trends. And a lot of the time, those trends aren't just current, they've been going on for a long time, but just because it's become popular at this time, they are saying this is a good time for us to use that. And I've never quite understood why that's necessary. I think a brand can be an expert in their field and they can own that. But as soon as you start again with Black Lives Matter, as soon as you start going into that territory when you're not necessarily the best equipped to talk about that or to educate about that, or you need to do a lot of work before you might be 10% of the way there, you shouldn't, you know, you don't, that's the danger for me of when you go down your timeline and brands are kind of using current trends that they don't know much about to try and get people to buy their products. So I hope it kind of starts the conversation about that, or joins the conversation.
Ibrahim?
I hope it inspires skepticism and cynicism around some of the most the household brand names that make the most captivating ads that that just play with your emotions. I hope that it resonates for people who have, bought into a brand and then learn about their record and then feel like, wait, why aren't you paying your workers right now? I mean, literally right now, there's these these manufacturers of garments who basically haven't been paid by big brands, Western brands, and then cut to those brands saying Black Lives Matter. Like that kind of cynicism that I feel when I see that, I hope that is shared by people who see film.
Last word for you.
I think it's twofold. One, I think that I hope that brands, platforms, any organization that has an intention to sell products and for people to buy them, that the commodification of social movements, political movements, communities is being seen and isn't going unnoticed, and that people are realizing that in order for you to really be about it, you need to pull up, as Rihanna said, and you need to actually start understanding what the practices are in your community, in your actual organization, rather than thinking that you're going to be jumping on a bandwagon so you can just sell your Pepsi advert. But also, there's a more of a deeper discussion, which I think I think is more important. And I think it's about the ways in which we engage and digest content, and deciphering from what we believe is what is good content and what's bad content, and understanding that we don't necessarily have to engage with it. And I think that's really important. I think that we need to understand that just because there's a brand speaking about LGBT rights or something like that, and they're just a trainer brand or whatever, that we kind of need to actually realize, okay, cool, that's commodification, and we need to be able to stand and actually be able to say that's not right. So it's about being able to call out brands and being able to be on the right side of history, making sure that we engage with ourselves and understand exactly what we need to be consuming, because not everything needs to be consumed. And I think that that's what Sucka Punch is all about. It's putting the onus on people to realize that they don't necessarily need to be a part of something. They don't need to be an influencer. They don't need to join this brand commercial world in which we're living in, and we can actually live without it.
Well, we are out of time. Thank you very much. That was a really big discussion for your average Tuesday night, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I think it speaks to, a small film having such a lot to say. So I hope anyone who's watched this will go and watch it, despite the fact that we spoiled it for them. And they can watch it and spot how you buried all the branding throughout. Well, yeah, thank you very much. And I am back here tomorrow night talking to the team behind Death Meets Lizalette. And this will be on YouTube tomorrow for anyone who wants to catch up on it. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.